Welcome to another CBTS Tech Talk. I'm the producer, Lance Hart, and today we will be just talking about building the best team when you secure your cloud network. As always, I'm joined by some very smart folks, and today I have Justin Rice, Chris DeBrunner, which is a joy. You'll love Chris, and John Lloyds. Welcome, guys. And Justin, let's jump right in.
All right. Thank you, Lance, and John and Chris. Thank you guys for coming today. As Lance said, we're going to talk about building the best team when you secure your cloud network. What I want to hopefully get out of this today is to learn a little bit more about folks who are running security businesses. Chris, that would be you. And John, really what you see across different clients and different business leaders you interoperate with or talk to on a daily basis, kind of what they're dealing with, right? We're going to learn a lot about different acronyms today. There's a bunch
acronym soup.
Yeah. So I want to get some more definition around those, but really tie those back to cloud networks, because the reality is, the reality is, 2-3 years ago, everybody went home, started working from home. As a security organization, you're now chartered with everybody is a firewall, right? How do I secure everybody, but also make sure that they have all the tools they need to be successful in their day-to-day operation? So what comes to mind to me first is the whole idea of the Secure Access Services Edge, SASE. So, John, I want to hear from your perspective. Can you define that for me first, in your own words, kind of what you see SASE is? And then, Chris, I want to ask you a little bit more about that in practice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and I probably have a very different opinion than maybe the firewall vendors that got to market first to define it. And I think the industry, you're starting to see it change a little bit. So, Secure Access Service Edge, at its most basic concept, is a secure internet gateway and remote connectivity. Think of what you would consider your VPN. It's moving security functions out to a distributed global cloud, right? So moving it to the edge of your network and allowing employees that work from home, rather than to come back into your network to reach applications, you hit this cloud distributed architecture. The second phase, and where I think SASE is starting to go, is it started as, well, what is the edge? Why does it need to be secure? That edge should have resources to it. And I think that's phase two. Now that we have this distributed architecture of security globally, what are the things that are behind it? And so you're going to start seeing compute resources. You're going to start seeing network functions like session border controllers being available in these distributed edges.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, right? I mean, it's an evolution. I mean, you're starting to see more convergence. Obviously, that evolution has, because of COVID, which kind of we were going to get there, but COVID definitely sped it all up. And at the end of the day, you're trying to reduce that risk, right?
Yep,
so how can you take existing technologies, be more efficient with those technologies to be able to provide, a technology, and I'm sure other people have heard me say this numerous times. You've got to look at the people, you have to look at the process, and you have to look at the technology. SASE is enabling technology for us to be able to protect the business and provide guardrails to our constituents and our employees.
And it's not just, you are protecting the business, but you're also, we talk about building the best team, right? What we mean by that is there's an expectation after the 2-3 years of work from home that I still can work from home, or I can work from anywhere. And if you want to recruit top talent, I want to be able to travel when I want to travel and still work. And I want to be able to live wherever I want. I not have to be part of the organization. So pre-COVID, I came into a physical building and sat behind a physical firewall. And so Chris's job, I'm sure it was super easy back then, Chris. And all we had to do is make sure my application sat in the data center, my security sat in the data center, my networking connected my employees to the data center, and I controlled every aspect of that, right? From the server running the app all the way to the desktop my employee was using. Now, if I want to recruit talent, if they want to bring their own device, we got to let them. If they want to work off of their phone instead of a computer, we've got to make sure that's capable. So what enables that? A lot of that is applications maybe moving to SaaS, or I've moved out of my data center into this distributed GCP or AWS or Microsoft Azure. And that's what creates this huge issue is for Chris to keep his security environment of my data center, my firewall, when the employees are no longer in his environment and the apps are no longer in his environment, now we're creating an experience of that end user complaining, going, it's slow, it's not working, because they're having to come back into the network, apply his policy. So what SASE really is doing at its, call it first permutation, is taking that security and network posture out of the environment and putting it into the cloud, into the global distributed architecture where your employees now sit anywhere in the world and your applications sit anywhere in the world. And hopefully Chris's job is just as easy because he's just applying that policy at the cloud level.
Well, we'll break this down for me, because I've seen out in the marketplace a lot of vendors out there who have a SASE offering. The way you describe SASE makes me think of SASE more as a framework in which products support, or is it its own product? John, why don't you? Or no, Chris, why don't you start, and then John will go to you.
Yeah, SASE is a part of ZTNA. So I think of back to the tools and the technology. It's a piece of what, getting to zero trust, and it's a very important piece of zero trust, right? It's the network, right, of the pillars of zero trust, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But it's an enabling technology, excuse me, for the people that have to secure the environment and help secure the employees. So SASE is there's a methodology. It is a technology, and yes, it's a framework.
So the workforce of the future, if I'm building a house and the foundation is going to be SASE, but the workforce of the future, you have to have a very solid foundation. That solid foundation is SASE. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and it's going to continue to expand. So today, aside from the framework, what are the parts of the framework?
Yep.
So the first is a firewall, right? At its most simple form, secure internet access. It is a firewall with rule sets, ACLs, the normal stuff you would put in a firewall.
Right.
And then there's different blades you can add on to that, right? And depending on the vendor, that blade could be remote access, remote connectivity, what we would traditionally say VPN, right? Routing back into the network or securing my home user out to the internet without having to come through there. There's also integrations as I move my things, my applications to SaaS. I'm now kind of reliant on Microsoft's security posture, Salesforce's security posture, and that may not be okay for me, right? So that's where you get to things like Cloud Access Security Brokerage, right? CASB, which is essentially taking an API between those common SaaS applications and that SASE OEM, that SASE platform, to do things like data loss prevention and taking a sandbox approach to detonating files before you're looking at them. So it's going to continue to grow, and especially with ZTNA, what are the new tools? Right now, we're more focused on every application being its own firewall, as well as every employee being its own firewall. So SASE will continue to grow. At its first permutation, it was a next-gen firewall distributed in the cloud.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so you have the next-gen firewall distributed in the cloud. Great. Understand the permutations. Where do things like zero trust network access come in, ZTNA? And then I'm going to actually ask you a little bit more about mobile device management or endpoint detection and response. I'd love to hear how those adjacencies all play together when you talk through securing your cloud network. So let's start with ZTNA. Chris, define ZTNA for us.
Yeah, zero trust network access, version 2.0. Version 1.0 was not good enough. So obviously we had to do a second version, a new and improved version. And it's very simple, right? It's understanding at its core the identity, the access, the network, the data that sits behind it, the applications that you have, and then continually validating that user is who they say they are from an identity perspective. That's ZTNA. But there's a ton of stuff that has to go into that. And that's obviously some of the things that you guys have been hearing is the ZTNA framework that the security practice here at CBTS has developed, and Ryan Hamrick and his folks. It's a journey. It's a framework. It's going to take time. It's hard. It's not something that is going to be simple to be able to do next day. It's not just a technology. It's policy. It's training. It's people. It's a lot of different things to be able to have the awareness and being able to protect against potential threats as well as validating that the users are supposed to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, have access to the data and the applications that they require.
See, so John, talking about that, like how are you seeing folks adopt a ZTNA framework?
Well, I think one of the key pieces of ZTNA 2.0, right, that's kind of a new focus or enhancement, is the idea of least privilege access, right? And I always kind of equate it, like growing up, my mom always would say, like, nothing good happens after midnight, right? Like, if you don't put yourself in a situation, nothing bad can happen.
Yeah.
And that's
I'm
kind
sure
of...
she's still right.
Right, yeah. Well, you never argue with your mother, no matter how old you get. But, I mean, that's the concept, right? If I don't need access to something, in the past, we said, all right, you're in this VLAN or this ACL, or you're trusted, you're on the network, you can access these things. So that typically we start to look at the first approach of how do I build it is I need to recognize you as a person instead of a computer. And that's where identity access management, kind of becomes that first step or that first layer into, the people side of ZTNA. So the first is, the network, then there's the people, and then there's the applications. And all three of those are really important. And SASE is very focused on kind of an easy approach to get started on the network side of ZTNA, but identity access management and starting to understand who I am as a physical person, and then what devices might I use? How do I authenticate that it's me using those devices? Moving to a world of passwordless authentication is kind of the new frontier of things. So I would say for customers of how do I get started on this journey, I would tell you, start looking at it as those three phases of how do I secure the people, how do I secure the application, how do I secure the network? And there's different tools for each of those.
So as a security leader, Chris, that helps you put guardrails around employee access, right? And for me as a user, it helps give me more confidence, and I'm not going to get into something that I shouldn't. That I shouldn't be going down a street that has bad news written all over it because you have already taken that decision making out of my hands.
Right. That's exactly right. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we are reducing risk in the business by helping the employees, right?
Yeah.
And zero trust starts at the endpoint. It starts at the person, the account, the individual, the identity. That's where it starts because that's the potentially the biggest impact.
Okay. Well, so where then something I've never really understood is where does like something like an MDM come into play with this whole MDM, mobile device management? Where does that come into play in this conversation?
Well, I'll tell you from the people side, and then Chris, because MDM is probably one of the first spots where you're going to get the business and the security disagreeing, right? So why mobile device management? Why is it important? I get back to retaining or attracting top talent, whether that's in your sales organization, whether that's in your finance or whatever it is, right? I have an expectation of convenience of an employee.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do whatever I need to do from my phone because I don't want to have to take my laptop with me when I'm on vacation, but I know I may still need to respond to things, right? Yeah. But also, I want this flexibility of using my own device. I don't want to carry a work phone and my own personal phone. I don't want my company providing me my phone because then they own the number in the phone, and if we part ways, I've got it, right? All these things that have always kind of been there. I also don't want the organization spying on me on my device. And so I understand you may have rules in your environment that I need to follow while I'm there. But when I'm not there, and it's my device, right? And so that is, this is where I really want to hear from Chris and dive in. But me as the business, not worried about security. I want to be able to use my own phone. I don't want you spying on me. And the business then goes to Chris and says, okay, figure out how to do that safely. So how do you do it safely?
Yeah, it's a compromise. And that's one of the things with the kind of the journey that we're on as a business is trying to figure out, what new technologies are out there. And then also trying to compromise for our constituents, the employees to do their job and to do it effectively and to not have to log in 18 times to be able to access certain things, right? MDM is at its core is you're trying to standardize, that tool set for your employees. Once you have that standard tool set, then you are able to apply those policies, centralize, and easy for me to say, centrally control, and support, mobile devices, endpoints, clients, all of it, and then do it cost effectively. And from a security standpoint, we're going to use tools and the features of an MDM to give those guardrails to be able to hopefully find a good, happy medium of security and being able to do your job.
How do you, as a security leader, go to employees, your constituents, as you said, and convince them that this compromise is a good idea? Like, what is the message out to employees?
Yeah, it's simple. We're trying to protect you. We're trying to help you. At the end of the day, security leaders are trying to be trusted advisors to the organization. We don't like to make your job harder more. No more than we want to make our own jobs harder, right? So it's just having a dialogue and having good communication from top to bottom, understanding, again, your constituencies inside of your business. What does the marketing department need? What does your finance department need? What are your operators and engineers? What do they need access to? And then trying to find, again, that happy medium. It's not a perfect science. I could probably write a matrix of risk and impact, which I've done for some of our customers. But it's dialogue.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the reality of what I think you guys in our organization do very well is you communicate, right? Here's why here's the benefit to you. Here's why we were doing it. Here's the risk of not doing it.
Right. Exactly.
And I think opening that dialogue and communication is key. John, you have any thoughts there?
Yeah. Well, the compromise is: do you want to carry 2 phones? No, you don't.
That's an easy answer.
Right? Do you want to be able to access this from your device? Right? So we, as an employee, have to also, understand that compromise of, okay, so while I'm on the corporate network, my camera's disabled. Right. Well, while I'm geo-fenced, whatever. I mean, that's obviously different for every organization, but some do literally use MDM to kill the camera. Others make it so certain applications are the only things accessible to make sure that you're not sharing data across those applications, or maybe it forces a log out, right? When you relieve a geo-fence, it logs you out of certain work applications on your personal device as you leave for the day. So, I mean, that to me is the compromise. I think I always call it the boogeyman. In your organization, your security team is busy enough. They don't care what you're doing off. I mean, that's just not, nobody's, going through firewall logs to see, what you were doing on Facebook. I mean, that's just,
right.
Chris is busy. He's got way too much time to worry about that. But that is the compromise is, okay, they're going to have some level of security. What am I willing to kind of put up with to be able to have the flexibility I want?
Yeah. I mean, I know I'm willing to get a little bit more, have you guys a little bit more control over things like mobile device for me to have a more efficient workday. As I am in between meetings or whatever, and I need to access something that's on the network, very nice to be able to do so.
Yeah, and especially our business, CBTS, our greatest asset is the people, right? That's really, I mean, so depending on what your business is, any security leader has to understand what's truly important. Again, I've talked about risk and impact, but what is truly important? Well, our business is our people. And so that is really important, and the data of our customers, right? Those are kind of the two pieces that are always kind of my North Star. Like, what am I protecting the people? Am I protecting the data? And that's every single day.
And what's on John's phone, because he's very paranoid about that. So.
Especially and the comment that his mother made. We've noted that.
It's going down a weird path of moms and cell phones today. But
all right. So listen. So we've looked at this as building blocks. So far, we've talked about SASE. We've talked about ZTNA. John, you talked about IAM in there. We've now talked about MDM. So it sounds like we're getting a lot broader than just the cloud network. But there's a lot of really important pieces in securing your perimeter, securing your employees. I have recently learned more about from you, Chris, around endpoint detection and response, EDR. Tell me about how that helps facilitate this entire umbrella.
Yeah, it's simply protecting the endpoint, so protecting the user. And EDR is basically next generation antivirus. So EDR is all the marketing buzzwords, machine learning, AI, but it's really about the behavioral analysis, the behavioral pieces and big data pieces that are the most effective with EDR. So your typical signature-based, file detections and preventions, that's great. But the bad guys are getting smarter. They're putting things in memory. So the behavioral piece of EDR is probably the biggest bang for your buck as to why to move to that, because we have seen it numerous times protect organizations that we support.
Give us an example, and John, Chris, one of you would be great. Give us an example of an organization that's EDR's helped.
An example. It happens every day. So we had
And
just
don't
recently.
say any names.
I'm definitely not. Definitely not gonna say any names. But we're all of our employees are under attack, right? So we're getting phishing. I mean, I think the last stat that I saw for our organization, I've seen it for other organizations as well. It's anywhere between 65 and 75% of the email that is inbound is junk. It's malicious. It just, that is coming at us all the time. And it's hard to make sure that all of that stuff doesn't hit somebody's inbox. And the threat actors are getting super, super good at making it look like legitimate email. So there are documents that are being attached with malicious macros. There's obviously links that go to a Google Doc. And the one recently was they clicked a link that they shouldn't have. It looked really, really good. And the EDR platform that was employed noticed a strange behavior, noticed the file. It looked legitimate, but noticed the behavior and the connections that were being made, alerted, and then we were able to take action. So it's just a constant barrage of malicious artifacts coming our way.
Good. Okay. Well, John, this is a question for you then. One, Chris, thanks for the explanation, but that's a lot of stuff that we've covered in just the last 21 minutes. How, as a leader, do you look at this from a financial situation and say, okay, well, I got to prioritize.
Right.
Like, where do you go from there?
And by the way, we didn't even get into MDR. We didn't get into patching and vulnerability. I mean, there's more layers than 30 minutes. From a business leader standpoint, to me, you got two choices to make. One is decide if good enough is good enough, or you need a partner. And here's what I mean by that. There is not a OEM, a manufacturer, a security vendor out there that checks every single box that we're talking about. I don't think there's even one that even physically attempts to check every single box, right? I mean, like some of the great security vendors aren't doing identity and access management or IDP types, right? Like you're going to need multiple vendors, multiple logos to build this. And then when you do get to certain vendors that maybe are really good SASE, CASB, and really good VPN, and really good EDR, maybe they're not the best in DLP, right? You get my point.
Right.
And so I have to make a decision of, is good enough, meaning I go with the smallest amount of potential vendors. It's one for IAM and one for the rest of my security stack, and it's leveraging the tools that are included with my Microsoft EA. It's my cheapest path forward, and I can hire one or two people from a specialization standpoint. This person knows this vendor really well, and this person knows this vendor, and I'm done. That's my most cost-effective path, and it is, not only from licensing or technology, but from people. It's also, do you want to be the CISO or the VP or whoever, or whatever the trickle down looks like in your organization that, when things hit the fan, you're going, well, it was good enough. I went with the cheapest path and here we are. And so that's where the second solution comes in, which is a partner. What we try to do at CBTS and what Chris and his team have done a great job of is being able to go to our customer and go, we're going to bring you best of breed. And then we're going to put our wrapper around it. So you don't need to go hire somebody that knows 17 different vendors. You partner with CBTS. We're bringing those 17 different best of breed vendors, and we have the expertise. We have the talent behind it. So to you don't have to manage 17 different tools. You don't have to hire across it, and you kind of get that peace of mind. And then you also get the economy of scale, so we can help with that first piece, which was the financial concern. So when you do it yourself, to do it cheap, you're going to sacrifice, and good enough is going to have to be good enough. When you partner with CBTS, you don't have to make that sacrifice. We're still bringing you the cost economic factor, but we're bringing you best of breed.
So it sounds like it makes sense then. I mean, where does an assessment fall in all of this? It sounds like it's beneficial for an organization to start with an assessment, maybe a penetration test, maybe a governance review. You start there to determine what the next logical path is. Chris?
Yeah, it's I mean that's a great question, right? When we talk to organizations, there's something that keeps the business leader up at night.
Yep.
And what is that thing that keeps them up at night? You address that, hopefully with services that we can provide. And then from there, you then build, you work on that assessment. We work on trying to build that roadmap, that journey, your security journey, using our assessment services and consulting CISOs that we have on staff.
Okay, good. Very good. Well, I would like to, let's see, we're at 2:25 here. We wanted to go to the questions. Lance, do we have anything popped up so far?
I do not think we have any questions yet.
Okay, great. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. I do want to kind of, as we're waiting for that to come through, John, you mentioned something that we didn't really touch on MDR or patching as a service, or patching in general. I want you to describe the patching for me.
Yeah. Here's patching is taking out the trash. It's wildly important, and if you miss it one week, it's annoying to your house, and nobody wants to do it, right? I mean, that's it, ultimately, as much as I joke about it, it is janitorial work. It is wildly important, but it's, every month, Patch Tuesday comes out. Somebody has to then spend the time to patch your PCs, patch your servers. Then you get into the networking piece where I've got different OEMs and I need to read release notes, and it can become a full-time job. And here's the problem to that. When we hire to do it ourselves as an organization, I'm hiring, it's not necessarily hard work, but it's a lot of work. So I'm hiring a lower level engineer. They're doing that for a year and they're kind of getting trained up and they're learning other parts of the business. So after a year, they're going, I want to go do more. I want to take on other things. Mm-hmm. And so either whether it's your organization or outside the organization, if you don't create that opportunity for them, you're hitting the restart button, trying to find somebody else to restart this patching cycle every year. Or you're going to your senior level engineers and going, I want you to take on patching. And good, I promise you'll be looking for new senior level engineers. It's not what they want to do with their time. And so the challenge is when you look at whether it's the weekly or the monthly Patch Tuesday updates that come out, or if it's looking at the vulnerability and reporting and understanding what's a priority and what isn't, making sure your equipment, your hardware, your networking stuff is patched. That is mission critical, and it's work nobody wants to do. And that's the challenge. We typically go in and talk with the average customer has a 54% successful patch rate. Chris, and we at CBTS deliver a patching as a service that has a 95% SLA tied to the service. And so that piece right there of just understand, and there's a lot of things that go into why and how they deliver that. But at a high level, when Chris talks about things that keep decision makers up at night, patching is always at the top of the list, and it's really hard for them to solve it because it's people and it's work that people don't want to do.
Yeah. That stat's phenomenal. 54%, 95% SLA. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and that's me taking credit for the work Chris and his team.
Oh yeah, naturally. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not taking any credit for my team either. It's the team.
Yeah. No, all good. Lance, did they come through yet?
No, sir.
Okay, great. Well, listen, we're going to start to wrap this thing up here. We wanted to keep this 30 minutes or less, and we're right at that 30-minute mark. I would love to hear some parting thoughts from both of you. And Chris, I'll start with you. We've covered a lot of topics today. There's a lot to digest here. You could talk about this, I'm sure, for days on end. I'm sure you do. Give us a word of wisdom to part today.
Yeah, it's security and risk mitigation is not easy, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is reduce risk and protect the business. We're trying to help our employees, give guardrails. We're trying to reduce cost, and we're trying to to be successful in business. So all of those things are very difficult to do. All of those things are things that the security practice can help any organization do, through a myriad of different services or technologies. And simply, we're just here to help.
You can usually pick one of those things, right? I want to save money. I want to make money. I want to reduce risk. You can usually pick one of those things, and you're usually generally okay. With security, you kind of have to check all the boxes. There's not a whole lot of sacrifice or compromise that you can legitimately make without.
There's some opposing forces in there somewhere, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. John, what do you think?
I would say the biggest, word to the wise or caution. We have a lot of these conversations, and one of the things I hear quite a bit is we don't have the budget. Chris made it very clear. You are under attack. Find the budget. Prioritize it because it's coming and it's going to cost you more. And by the way, when you don't have these things in place, your cybersecurity insurance is going to be a higher premium, right? So there's space in the budget, whether you look at it as a way to, managing the attack surface and down, to be able to limit that premium on your cybersecurity insurance, which is, if you can even
Right.
get it these days, right? I mean, there are some that are just getting dropped or premiums are going up and coverage is getting lowered. Or look at your budget as what is the cost of not acting, right? I promise you there are a lot of retail stores that have been in the news that have spent 8 times what they would have, right? Had they budgeted it in the first place. So I understand there's always puts and takes, and running a business, there's more than IT and there's more than security. But that's one of the things I hear the most often is this keeps me up at night. Here's what we can do to help you solve it. It's not in the budget. You need to get with finance. You need to rework those budgets. These need to be the priority.
Yeah. Okay. No, great. Lance, before I close it up, any other?
No, I think we don't have any questions today. We had less viewers, but what we'll do is we'll post this after the stream, as well as I'm sure Gabby and our team in marketing will chop this up and use this in different places. So I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you all. John, Chris, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure talking and learning from you. I learned so much from you guys. And for everybody watching, thank you and have a good long weekend.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and take care.
Thanks, Lance.